Today we're going to get into my 10 takeaways from Oklahoma's 28-21 win against the Army Black Knights, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. So today we're going to get into my 10 takeaways from Oklahoma's 28-21 win in overtime against the Army Black Knights. And the first one is Kyler Murray is still the best football player on the field even when he's not playing at his best. Murray was responsible for all 4 of Oklahoma's touchdowns, 3 passing, 1 running, had 165 yards passing on 11 of 15 completions, also rushed for 71 yards on 7 carries, went 33 yards to the house on 1 play. Many of the plays where he was running was when the play broke down or when Oklahoma absolutely needed to get a play made to keep the drive alive and to get into position to win this game late and in overtime. My goodness, I know it wasn't the best showing for Kyler Murray, especially with that ill-advised pick, where you can make the argument that Hollywood gave up on the route, or you can make the argument that Hollywood was just overthrown. Point is, you still got a lot out of Kyler Murray. And that showed. He had 236 of Oklahoma's total 355 yards. My next takeaway is that Trey Sermon proved Lincoln Riley to be correct in saying he's the number 1 tailback for the Sooners going forward. There had been a shakeup because Rodney Anderson's knee injury had just basically said, yo, we're going to need Trey Sermon or Marcellus Sutton or TJ Pledger or Kennedy Brooks to step up. Looks like Trey Sermon was going to have the job right away. Felt a little shaky against UCLA, felt a little shaky against Iowa State, and then against Army when you needed a dominant tailback to step up and take it over, he did just that. He had 119 yards rushing on 18 carries. That's better than 6 yards per clip. I don't think you can ask for much more from him, especially under these circumstances in a very tight ball game where Oklahoma did not have an opportunity to run nearly as many plays as it would have liked to. And you can see Trey Sermon as maturing as a running back. He's very patient. I would even say he's as patient as Le'Veon Bell was when he was still playing. We know he's still held out, but you get the point. The guy will wait for holes to develop, and then he'll run through them. He had about 4 runs where I thought that he was an ankle tackle away from breaking it and going to the house. My next takeaway is that the offensive line looked good. It gave up the 1 really bad sack of Kyler Murray, but after that, kept him clean for most of the day, set him up in good shape to make good decisions when the play broke down, and again, had a 100-yard rusher at tailback, 190 total yards on the ground. When the offensive line was on the field, I felt that they did their job well. My next takeaway is the fullbacks and tight ends were unexpectedly good against Army, man. Carson Meyer had the first touchdown of the game. Who had that on their bingo card? And then both tight ends, Lee Morris and Grant Calcaterra, each had receptions of 33 yards or more. As a matter of fact, Calcaterra and Lee Morris combined for 85 yards receiving. I thought when they had opportunities to make plays, they did just that. Next takeaway is the receivers weren't very good. I know CeeDee Lamb had 2 touchdown grabs and he had 4 catches, but this for 22 yards total. And Miles Tees did have a big play to set up the touchdown late in overtime. And A.D. Miller had a nice catch, but goodness, Marquis Brown got skunked. That is not a thing that you expect to happen, and it's not a thing that needs to continue to happen if Oklahoma is going to continue to win football games. I dare say there's not another game on the schedule where Marquis Brown can get skunked and Oklahoma will win the game, especially when there were at least 2 plays where it felt like Kyler Murray had opportunities to get the ball to Marquis Brown. One was Marquis Brown just gave up on the play or was overthrown, and the other one, I felt they had an opportunity to make that grab. This would be in the first half. He just reached out with one hand, tried to one-hand it, or didn't lay out for the football, whatever it is you want to say. I don't think there is a good argument for Marquis Brown not coming up with a reception at all. It's just a bad look. And take this into account. The foursome of CeeDee Lamb, Miles Tees, Marquis Brown, and A.D. Miller had 6 catches for a total of 57 yards. Again, Army had a lot of time, 44 minutes in time of possession, but you still expect more out of that receivers group. My next takeaway is that the defensive line Didn't look as good to me as apparently it looks to Lincoln Riley. I watched the game like he watched the game. I saw a defensive line that didn't get any penetration. I saw a defensive line that, was getting his knees taken out. But hey, man, get off the block. Figure it out. You go to Oklahoma. That is what you're supposed to do. Neville Gallimore, Ronnie Perkins, Amani Bledsoe, Kenneth Mann. Kenneth Mann was the bright spot on that line with 11 tackles and the pick to turn the momentum late and give Oklahoma an opportunity to win the game. But outside of that, that is not the defensive line that we have seen even against Iowa State, let alone Florida Atlantic and UCLA. Like Marquis Brown being skunked, I dare say there's not another game on the schedule where the defensive line can get soundly beaten like this and come away with a W. My next takeaway is that the linebacker play was superb. Kenneth Murray Jr., Curtis Bolton, Mark Jackson, Ryan Jones, all four of those guys showed up to play. They had 74 of Oklahoma's total of 116 tackles. My goodness. And then you have Kenneth Murray Jr., who broke the school record for tackles with 28. Curtis Bolton had 23. Mark Jackson had 15. They were everywhere and they needed to be. If Kenneth Murray Jr. and Curtis Bolton aren't in on every play, I think that Army would have had an opportunity to break this game open in the third quarter, particularly at the start of the fourth quarter, and OU would have had no way back because the Black Knights are really good at controlling the clock and running the football. The next takeaway is the secondary wasn't very good, man. Just wasn't. Khalil Houghton, Buki Radley-House, Trey Norwood, Pernell Motley, all of those guys had missed tackles, and they weren't the missed tackles that you might be able to forgive, the kind where you tried to wrap somebody out and they just ran out of you, right? Just ran out of your arms. There were lots of missed tackles where guys just tried to throw their shoulders into other guys or roll into their knees. They weren't good, traditional, hard-nosed tackles. And I think that is a thing that Kerry Cooks and Mike Stoops are going to have to get across to this puppy secondary is, in this league, you're going to have to wrap people up and put them on the ground because it ain't high school. And for a guy like Khalil Houghton or Parnell Motley or Trey Norwood, you really shouldn't have to have that conversation. They know what caliber of football they have to play. Now, some of this is scheme, some of this is coaching, some of this is want to. All of it needs to be figured out, particularly in the secondary. The next takeaway is that for the first time all season, we didn't get much of anything out of the special teams. And I guess over the first 3 games, we've been a little bit spoiled. We've had block punts returned for touchdowns. We've had kickoffs almost returned for touchdowns. We've had punt returns almost returned for touchdowns. And we had an Iowa State team that chose not to kick the ball to Trey Brown. Now, I know Trey Brown was not returning kicks against Army, and Buki looked good doing it, but a guy like Austin Seibert has to make that field goal late. I liked Lincoln Riley's strategy of trying to set it up to where Austin Seibert could be the hero and go win this football game for you. It didn't work. Just like Army's halfback pass, that was a good strategy. Didn't work. But I think that we really would love to have had those special teams show up, particularly in a tight game where we absolutely could have used the edge and they weren't there. And my last takeaway is this team still has a lot of work to do. Yes, Oklahoma has an opportunity to still make the college football playoff and perhaps win a national title, but knowing what the gap is between Alabama and everybody else, there is a lot of ground to cover before Oklahoma can confidently say it can take on an Alabama and win. But before that, they got to beat Baylor. And if Baylor watched this tape against Army, they're going to say what I think every Big 12 football team is going to say for the rest of the year. You can absolutely run the football on Oklahoma. And that's what I would expect to see folks do. I know Florida Atlantic couldn't do it well. I know that UCLA couldn't do it well. But I think Army was the best football team that Oklahoma has seen. And Iowa State might even make an argument with me about Army. But one thing is for sure. Everybody's going to get better. Everybody is going to watch the tape. So Oklahoma needs to continue to improve, needs to continue to make strides to being a better defense, if not the best defense. And that starts with the top. Whether it be Lincoln Riley or Mike Stoops or one combination of both, the defense in particular has to come along. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.